Thanks so much, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Our next guest is absolutely one of the best actresses there is. With her Oscar-winning turn in The Fighter, her breakthrough role on the innovative TV series Homicide: Life on the Street, her current role on Showtime's wonderful I'm Dying Up Here, and now back again in The Equalizer 2 as Denzel Washington's reason for revenge. Let's take a look at Melissa Leo in the trailer.
Samuel, lift off.
What kind are that?
Make sure she gets in her apartment, okay?
How you doing? I'm the driver you called to take home your girlfriend.
Not a girlfriend, man.
Oh, credit card was invalid.
Give yourself a nice tip, huh?
I heard about these. I've never seen one before.
Yeah, well, now you have.
You're not gonna ask me if she got home okay? Okay. I'm gonna need anything you might have used to record what you did to her tonight. Come in. Get up. You know her name?
No, sir.
Her name is Amy. Give me your left hand. You ever see Star Trek? Very good. 5 stars for Amy.
Hey, you should let somebody else do this.
Like who?
Anybody.
You're right. I guess anybody could do it, but nobody does, Miles.
It's great you're helping all these random people stay off the radar.
They killed my friend. So I'm gonna kill each and every one of them. The only disappointment is that I only get to do it once.
It's a mistake to go to war with him. They're highly trained.
They're going to war with me. Look at you. Your father, your mom, they just didn't tell you. I punish you guilty. If you're lucky, I'll give you the opportunity to do the right thing. This ain't one of those times. Call 911.
Who are you, Jackie Chan?
Everybody, please welcome the great Melissa Leo. Hi there. Thanks for being here. Congratulations on The Equalizer, Part 2, back again with Denzel. Do you love working with Denzel Washington?
Beautiful, beautiful actor to work opposite. I have also got the privilege of having played a different character him. So I was in the first Equalizer, playing Susan Plummer opposite his Robert McCall, but I also did Flight with him, Bob Zemeckis' Flight, and so I was a very different character opposite his very different drunken character. So that sort of then can deepen our relationship, oddly enough, as Susan and Robert, having had that experience before. So he's one of the absolute most delightful actors to work with.
I imagine having that experience before is also what leads to you working with him again on something like The Equalizer and The Equalizer 2. He enjoyed working with you so much when your name comes up. I'm sure he's like, absolutely, like I love working with her.
Well, it's nice to think that that's the way it happens, but I know that he does have casting approval, and that is absolutely a really, really nice embrace by somebody so talented as him. Both Antoine Fuqua I had also worked with prior to the first Equalizer. I had worked with him on Olympus Has Fallen. And although a girl never quite knows how she gets a job, I know that the work on both Flight and Olympus led to my having this wonderful
The major
part.
creative forces behind the project really enjoy working with you. I think one of the things that you and Denzel are two actors who give so much to a scene. You're so good at applying nuance and applying character tics and going big when you need to and keeping it small when you need to, and you're wonderfully entertaining to watch. Like, you never deny the audience entertainment in your performances. Is that something that the two of you are aware of when you're crafting the scenes together, or is it all much more natural and instinctual than that?
I cannot speak for Mr. Washington. because although I've had the great pleasure of working with him, I have no idea what his experience is. And we don't know each other in that way. That would be delightful, but that's just not what happens. So I know him slightly over the years as I get to know him, but that sense of being able to be with somebody and be able to believe. So as an actor, we're being asked to pretend the truth, right? So I could, oftentimes in auditions, for all the actors starting out and having a hard time doing auditions, you go to an audition and you're reading with a reader who's not really right for the part. They're not reading very well most of the time. They're sort of throwing the lines to you, and so now you have to do their job and your job. You put me on the set with Mr. Washington, now I have to do less work because I can simply react to him, and now I've done it. The other thing of working with this caliber of people, Antoine Fuqua in particular, he's an incredibly fastidious, careful filmmaker. And one of the delights about Equalizer 2 is it has this kind of messy-looking action that goes on, and it, you never quite know what the next thing that's going to happen, and all that excitement of an action film. But the specificity that you begin to see in this thumbing through his passengers in his lift car. I always think when I see these emotional portrayals for maybe all of 5 seconds in the back of that car, what kind of work went in to get that performance? And it's about being specific. It's about knowing what you need. It's about providing the actor with what they then need. And Mr. Fuqua is heads above most directors in that department. I imagine that's why Washington works with him again and again.
Are you an actor who works closely with the director on the development of your character, or do you find that you do most of your work sort of as homework and then come in and are ready to go and answer the director's questions if they have them?
It's all of those things and many other less specific ways of doing it. You catch as catch can. You use what you have. You might have a not so good script, but you've got a great costume designer and locations department, and the company can then rise the film above its own expectation with the people who are working on it in a way, and conversely the other thing can happen as well. So it doesn't depend so much on the character or the film. You want a good story, you want a solid story, you want to have people know what you're working on, but in the end it's like anything. It's who you're working with that probably matters the most as to what the experience is.
Oftentimes I think you're cast and cast wonderfully as sort of larger-than-life women. I think of your role as on I'm Dying Up Here, or your, like as I said before, your Oscar-winning turn in The Fighter. And then with The Equalizer 2, what I love so much about your character in this is that she's kind of a regular woman, with the exception of that she's like a CIA operative. But the fact that she's got her friend, Denzel Washington, she's got a job, she's got a husband, she's just a sort of, regular everyday girl. Is that something that it comes easier to you to play, or do the kind of sort of more larger than life persona come easier to you as an actor?
There's a certain kind of regular white lady that I am not good at playing. Really? There's a much better actor to get for that job. If you want to land that this is your average American with probably right-leaning attitudes, there's a much better actor to hire. When David O. Russell wanted me to play Alice Ward, and I don't know what her political proclivities were, but I felt there was a much better actress to play Alice Ward. I was a good 30 years too young to play her, first of all. Yeah. And so that's difficult. And then you have to go reaching further for the character. No, the graciousness of Susan Plummer is Richard Wank, the writer, and Antoine Fuqua, and his great respect for me as an actor, for me as a woman, in a way that I don't ordinarily get. It's very important to them that Susan have a graciousness about her, and that helps me then grow as an actor.
You feel like playing a part like this helps you grow as an actor because it is a little bit different than what you...
The action sequence was actually closer to something that I can understand. Really? That gracious, simple woman who has a great power, but she's not throwing it around.
That's true, because you do kick a little ass in that action sequence.
I do what I can.
What was it like doing the choreography for that?
Well, that was an important part about it. Having worked with Fuqua before and Wank, when I read Wank's description on the page of the fight, it was pretty clear to me what he wanted. Then I was curious because sort of separate from the rest of the company, this wonderful group of fight choreographers are, building this. And then they're going to show it to Mr. Fuqua, and he's going to approve and make the final choices on the fight. So I wanted to get in there when the guys were figuring the fight, because I felt there was a lot of story points could be told. And actually, when I arrived at the first rehearsal, there was a delightful young woman who was there to stunt double me. She does a bang-up job in the film. But she had on a harness that they had constructed for her that had a handle at the back of her neck and at her waist. And their idea of the struggle in the hotel room was that they'd probably be picking her up and throwing her a lot. Oh, and that made it easier. I was confused by that. This is a trained CIA operative. So I told the young woman that this is not like the other jobs. You're not going to get beat in this. You're going to fight for your life, and you're going to have the capacities. And I worked with them. I worked with the stuntmen that were playing the two fellows that attack her to really build characters, and supported 100% by Fuqua and Wank in that. And I think it's why the fight then comes off in this sort of way that is a little more shocking than it could have been.
It's always more shocking when violence is portrayed as messy and as closer to life as it would be. And closer to life is always as close to the characters as possible. Whenever things are a little too choreographed and a little too neat, it becomes too movie-ish and you can kind of get pulled out of it. I love the fact that your character fights back in this and is really fighting for her life. You mentioned the fighter and you mentioned your character in that. It's so fascinating. An actor develops a process for themselves a lot of times and a way that they like to go about creating their character and sometimes working, but an actor is also at the mercy of directors who will throw, because of their process, all of that out the window. And I know with David O. Russell, he shoots a lot, he shoots really fast, and he's throwing out new ideas all the time for sort of different things that he can get from the set. Is that something that for you as an actor you're sort of always prepared for, or was that a new experience for you? Do you like that?
Well, what they didn't tell you in acting school is you really have to be prepared for anything. Yeah. And what experience has given me, it's given me the knowledge that I need to work with what is. And if I sit around wishing that so-and-so was a different person and did it a different way and gave me a this, you have to take it as it comes. So that's basically the way that I work. And there are things that I do. I do a breakdown of a script. Not all actors do that. I do a very thorough breakdown of the script, whether I have 3 scenes in it or I don't break down their side of the script. But whatever it is that I'm doing in the film, I'm breaking it down in a way that the AD department usually is more responsible for. The script supervisor, the AD department. Costume always makes a nice breakdown of the film. But that notion of doing what I was taught in acting school when we expected to be working on the live stage, and your first inroad is the page. Now, if you have problems on the page, then you need to go to the filmmakers and see, I don't know if this this feels truthful coming out of my mouth, and you can discuss and adjust. And it's every job, every woman that I play, every group of people that I work with, it always ends up being quite a different experience. And I find that adjusting to what the experience is a better method for me to take than to go, no, I do it this way.
Is there still a way for you as an actor to hold on to the way that you do it while doing it their way as well?
Absolutely. And some people like Fuqua welcome that. Right. And others like David O. Russell are baffled by it and think they have to tell you a lot of things. So that's how he works.
Yeah. When you were doing that performance and when the film came out, did you see or expect the response that came with that film and that you would potentially win an Academy Award for your performance in that film? Your performance is unbelievable in The Fighter. I remember when I saw that movie for the first time just being floored by both you, Amy Adams, and Christian Bale in that movie. But the level of And it's what I love about you as as an actress is the level of performance that you bring. You're never hiding the fact that you're performing, but you're also never not in character, and you're still doing it very well. So you're channeling a lot of things and a lot of layers for viewers to latch onto. Sorry, I don't know if
It's storytelling, and all of those things matter. You know, I don't know that I could have been Alice Ward without Alice's permission, which I got from her eyes, without David's belief in my being able to do it, without Christian, Mark, all 7 of those young, one of them was older than me, women that played my daughters, without Mark Bridges' costumes, Johnny's doing my hair. It was all of those things created Alice. I'm willing to become her, and I'll use every ounce of help that I can find along the way, and try to disregard what doesn't feel as helpful. The town of Lowell, I'd walk out of the hair and makeup trailer after I'd gotten all Aliced up, and the whole town would call me what they called her, "Hey, Nana!" Wow. So then I knew, oh, they're buying it. I could believe it then.
That's amazing. Did you ever have a feeling like that doing a character before?
I had never played an actual person before I played Alice. It had all been made up. And what I learned in playing Alice is what a pleasure that is to have this other input in answering those actor questions, as I call them. What's her history? Where did she come from? The things that aren't on the page, that you can then take choices to help tell the story. You know, I could say, oh, she worked at the circus, but is that helping us tell the story? Maybe it is. And with Alice there and an entire town and all her 9 children around all the time we were shooting.
I had 9 kids. I love all of them the same. Sorry. It just made me think of the line. Sorry.
It's an important line. There was a lot of discussion about that. Like, how can you love one more? One loves more. And I just knew, walking in Alice's shoes, you love them all. You just love them all. What do you love them one way, And Alice was a smart enough mother that she loved Dick in one way and she loved Mick in another. Yeah. You know, Mick was more capable than Dickie. Of course, she was a little more looked after him.
Protective.
He was the older. She'd had him first, you know. And 2 very different men, and one kind of needed Alice more.
For the past couple of years, you've returned to television with I'm Dying Up Here, the Showtime series about the comedy scene in the late 70s in L.A. A wonderful show, a show that I really like, and a great performance by you. Your character is loosely inspired by Mitzi, right?
I like to call it an homage.
An homage
to our now gone Mitzi.
How much before going into the show because she just recently passed away, right? Had you met her or talked to her?
No, I had never met Mitzi Shore before. I had never stepped foot in a comedy club.
Really?
Before.
You're not a comedy fan?
Not that I'm not a fan. I'm not a viewer.
Gotcha.
I don't watch movies or much television. I watch really lousy television, cooking shows and things like that. I don't, Anyway.
Wait. Sorry. You opened up a little box. I'm kind of curious what your viewing habits are now. What movies do you watch when you watch a movie? What's the last movie you watched?
Oh, well.
That you weren't in?
Oh, well, the last movie that I watched was Training Day because it was on the airplane coming back. And so I thought, oh, let me take a look. And boy, is Mr. Washington so young. Ethan Hawke doesn't look so different.
No, he does not. He doesn't age. It's an odd thing. So you had already worked with Antoine twice, and you hadn't seen Training Day?
No, I had seen it before.
Oh, okay.
And I rarely rewatch something that I've seen, but it just sparked my imagination as I thumbed through them on the plane back.
And for TV, you just watch cooking shows?
And TV, I watch cooking shows. I watch things that are light. I didn't really like the title, but I gave it a try and have quite enjoyed watching Jane the Virgin. It's something that's light, something that's not going to introduce me to anything too complex. I'd rather go down the road with Jane having been accidentally, artificially inseminated than go down trying to deal with murders and, if I'm watching.
Gotcha. Because you're sort of dealing with that stuff in the work that you do as an actress?
No, I think the world is far too violent and ugly a place, and I just want something sort of shiny and pleasant.
So you said that your character is kind of an homage, and that you had never really set foot in a comedy club before.
And then I wanted to correct myself because Bud Friedman many, many years ago invited me into improv class he used to give at the Improv. So I went in there, but not in the evening when the show was up. I went to one class, I tried it one time, and I said, thank you very much, but I'm not a comedian.
Really?
Yeah. The hardest thing I've ever attempted to do, to make someone laugh on purpose.
But I imagine when it comes to improvisation on set and when you're shooting, you do it in character.
I can wrangle around with some improvisation. Improv films are not my favorite films. Yeah. Improv dialogue within a film is not my favorite dialogue. It's very hard for an actor to edit themselves as they make up their own words. And it's there's something much more interesting to me in a well-written script that's been agreed upon before we begin. But like I said, you take what comes and you do what you can with it.
Now, the last episode of I'm Dying Up Here this season had your character forcing, in some ways, all of the comedians to go on strike against. Oh wait, have you not? You've told me that you haven't seen this. Excuse me.
I told him that I didn't see it, and he shouldn't tell me what happened. But I know what happened.
Oh, okay.
I shot it.
Okay, good. I'm wondering what you thought of playing a character.
Okay, but I have to stop you right there.
Okay.
Because I feel very strongly about this. Goldie does not make them go on strike.
Oh, there we go. Now we're talking about it.
That's their choice. She tells them she's not affected by it because that's the way this woman, from some time in 1940, has made her way into the 70s and has what is still today, if we are using the Comedy Store as the example, one of the biggest earners in any industry. Mitzi started that. Mitzi made that happen. And that part of Mitzi we take for Goldie. That she is this woman in the early 70s in Los Angeles who took what was a nightclub that had music, folk music, playlets, all kind of, maybe a little burlesque, reaching back into vaudeville something. And a bunch of the guys were comedians, you know, her husband was. And apparently, the husband leaves with this property up on Sunset. Mitzi's in there. She paints the club black, puts a tiny postage stamp of a stage there, spotlight on the stage, and says comics only. It is the first time anywhere in the world that occurred. She changed the world. We have a Comedy Central channel now.
Multiple comedy clubs in cities across the country.
And Mitzi started that. So that's an honor, a badge of honor that I take on as Goldie. And for a woman alone in the world who is absolutely going to be called a bitch because she's making her way through the men's world, eventually you just don't give a shit people are calling you a bitch. You don't care if they're walking out on you because you got 50 more coming in the back door. The loyalty she's shown them. And I was upset with the way that they don't completely reveal Goldie's side of it in it. That the comics side is much more heavily weighted in the way, and I had to really fight and work to slip in this notion of they can say she's making them go on strike all they want. She's not making them do anything. She's not making them be comics. She's not making them go on strike. And the fact of the matter is nobody's asking her, and they won't talk about it in the show, how much it costs to run a club. She's got to buy the booze. She's got to pay under the table to the cops. She's got the parking. None of them are asking, even if they can help her with that. And she gives them a place to do their thing. What are they going to do in their living room? So
I have
Yeah, that's
to tell
a
you.
bowl of hot water you jumped into.
No, I'm actually really glad that I jumped in it because, to be perfectly honest with you, you changed my perspective on the end, on the last act of the final episode of this season. I just watched it this morning, and I had questions about the perspective of the show in that, because we have this moment where the women kind of come together, but they seem to be coming together as almost strike breakers to a certain degree. But at the same time, the way that you're talking about it shed light on what Ari Grainer's character was so upset by when Bill and Eric were sort of sexistly shitting on on Goldie in that scene, and that's what she got upset and walked away from. That there was a certain amount of sexism from the perspective of the all-male comics upset at this woman who was in charge of the place and had not put into perspective exactly the fight that she had to build what she built. So I also say thank you for being so passionate about it.
That's the world in which we live, and in fact, the book in which it's based has a lot of misogyny on its pages. He doesn't mean to. He's a very good writer. He does his research, but there's a certain amount of misogyny on those pages.
Yeah, especially coming from that time. Yeah. Think of Sam Kinison, who came from that time. There's like straight misogyny. Let's get a couple questions from our audience. Who's a question? Right here.
Hi. I know you had your start in television, so I was wondering, like, what was it that you got to take away from that experience that you got to carry with you in your career, whether it was in television or film?
Well, the very first thing that you're talking about, I was actually a super duper lucky girl, because by the time I landed the job on All My Children up on the East 60s, I was actually also landed a job in a play at the Public Theater with Christopher Walken. So get up early in the morning, go to 62nd Street, tape the day, hop in a taxi cab, which I could now afford because I was getting a paycheck, and zoom on down. And if I had time, I'd take the subway because I needed every dollar I was getting, and go down to the Public Theater and do that. It was a great job.
What was the play with Christopher Walken? Sorry?
It was called Cinders. It was written by a Polish playwright, Janusz Glowacki. And it was a very, very fascinating play that had a lot of, as good theater does, parallels with our world, although it was a Polish girls' reform school that Walken's character comes into to shoot a film while we're doing, the Brits understand this better, the Christmas pantomime of Cinderella, Cinders. So the girls that are incarcerated in this, juvie detention for girls, are doing this play, and he comes in to film us doing the play.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's a great play.
Can I ask, when was that? That was...
I was before my son was born, so it was before 1987, and it was after I was born, which was 1960. So it was between 60 and 87.
Gotcha. And what was it like working with Christopher Walken at that time?
Heaven. It was so good. It was really good. I learned so much. The first thought was, oh, Chris Walken, I'll get to see his process, because I'd just come out of acting school.
What was his process?
Well, I'm still waiting.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I think we have time for one more question. What do we got here?
Hi, Melissa. I'm Dan. I'm a really big fan of yours and Denzel Washington. I think you guys are two of my favorite actors. And I was wondering, what was the hardest scene to film with Denzel Washington in Equalizer 2?
None of it. I can't say any of it was hard, because there's a lot. Shooting on dying here is hard. You've got a different idea of this character you're playing, and you're struggling to get it on screen. That doesn't happen when you're working with Fuqua. He's inviting Washington to bring what he's got, and by God, he's inviting me to bring what I've got. Fuqua is absolutely, if not the best director I've ever worked with, right up there, top 3. Absolutely. And I mention his name all the time because I do not know that man gets the recognition he needs. Thrilling action movies? Yeah, sure. Brilliant American director.
I kind of agree with you.
And my brother went to Stony Brook.
I kind of agree with you, because you can tell just by the fact that so many actors want to work with Antoine Fuqua. I mean, nobody books the actors that he books unless the acting community is going, oh, Antoine, you got to work with him. He's fantastic. And I imagine that's the conversation all the time.
Exactly so. I mean, and Washington, going back with him more than once already, and to do this thing that neither of these men, although they have been invited again and again and again to make a sequel.
right,
They
the
hate
first.
using that word, so I hate to use it in there too. It's a continuing story in their mind. Sequel, you feel like you're gonna, I don't know. The second one, the way I compare them is they're both great action pictures. It's an interesting and different kind of tale, but in the second one, there's also this incredible dramatic feature, and as well as a great action film because of the character development. They showed you the bit they showed you so much of it with the woman in the back seat, and Fuqua very tastefully lets you know what happened to her without showing her tatas and all. And then I have never, as a female, watched an action sequence like what happens up in that room she's just left with those young men and felt what I guess a lot of guys feel watching it. Yeah! So
It's a movie that works for both men and women.
men, women, young, old, black, white. He's got somebody in there for everybody to make a connection to. It's a character portrait. That's genius.
Well, Melissa, you're one of my favorites, so please come back whenever you get the chance. Equalizer 2 comes out this weekend, right? Or today? It's out today.
Today, it's out
I don't
today.
know
They
what
say
day it
today. It actually, if you were really sneaky, you could have seen it before midnight last night. But go see it now.
Everybody, please put your hands together for Melissa Leo. Let's hear it.